Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm your host, Samantha Studebaker Carl, coming to you from Indianapolis, Indiana. And I'm here with my good friends Jason and Lori and Catherine. And today we're going to continue our discussion of The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. We are in chapter 3, and this is going to be part 4 of chapter 3. And chapter 3 talks a lot about the specific ways that we upper limit ourselves. And today we're going to be talking about, we're starting on page 97 and talking about our integrity breach, and that this is one of the ways that we upper limit ourselves. But before we get going with the reading, I want to give my friends an opportunity to introduce themselves. And so go ahead and jump out, guys, and then Catherine, you can take it from there.
Hey, good
Lori
morning.
Evans in, good morning, Jason. Lori Evans in Denver.
Good morning, Lori. This is Jason from Tampa. Great to see you.
Good morning, everyone. This is Catherine Clement, and I will start the reading. Integrity breach. Committing a breach of integrity is one of the quickest ways to bring yourself down after an excursion past your upper limit. The most popular integrity breaches are lies, broken agreements, and withheld truths. If you will begin to focus your keen awareness on those three behaviors, you can make huge strides in transcending your upper limit and establishing yourself in your zone of genius. Begin by understanding integrity on the most practical level of daily reality. Many people think of integrity as a moral issue, and of course, in part it is. However, there's a much more fundamental way to think of integrity. If you think of integrity as a physics issue instead of a moral one, you'll see that it belongs alongside unarguable forces such as gravity. Long before morality came into play, the original definition of integrity had to do with wholeness and completeness. To be in integrity meant you were whole and complete. To be out of integrity meant a breach in your wholeness had occurred and there was a gap in your completeness. Thinking of integrity as a physics issue gives you a much more practical tool than regarding it simply as a moral issue. Morality is about good and bad, right and wrong, all of which are highly arguable. Physics is about did and didn't, not is and isn't. Let me give an example of how a physics approach to integrity can be valuable in daily life. Think of communication between people as a flow of energy. Think of your communication with your own inner depths in the same way. A breach of integrity stops the flow of energy just as a pebble jammed in a garden hose stops the flow of water. Let's say you and I meet on the street. How are you doing? You ask. Fine, I say. You notice, though, that I look anything but fine. You notice that my mouth is downturned in a slight grimace and that a vertical worry furrow is etched in my brow. Now you have a choice. You can do the polite thing and overlook what you see, or you can make mention of what you noticed by going to a deeper level of communication. Are you really fine? You look worried about something. By the way, I recommend that you break the surface like this only with people you care about. I don't think it's worth your while to go to this deeper level with the pizza delivery guy or the meter maid. If you decide to break through the surface politeness by calling attention to my worried brow, you keep the flow of communication going between us. If you don't, the flow stops. Here's why. The flow of communication includes your awareness of my furrowed brow. If you choose not to mention this awareness, the flow gets blocked. Pressure builds up as the flow looks for how to make a detour around the blockage. It's a pebble in the hose. I'm not saying it's a bad pebble. That would be the moral approach to the problem. It's just a force to be reckoned with. It's a gap in the completeness of the communication between us. Consider the moment Bill Clinton uttered those magic words, "I did not have sexual relations with that woman." I happened to be watching that moment on television and I groaned when he said it. My wife and I, both of whom had voted for him, turned to look at each other with raised eyebrows because we knew immediately that he was lying. How did we know that? Go watch the moment yourself. It's on YouTube and other such sites, and you'll see what tipped us off. When he speaks those words, he makes a little head jiggle and sideways cut with his eyes. I'd seen the same little expression dozens of times in therapy sessions with juvenile delinquents and others when they were trying to lie. In poker terms, it's a tell. In body language research, it's a clue to deception. To us, it was a flashing neon sign that said a lot more than, I actually did have sex with that woman. It was also saying, I'm a naughty little boy who will keep acting out until I get caught. People of Clinton's personality type are compelled to keep testing the limits. They're unconsciously trying to find out whether they can outsmart everybody else, and they keep escalating until they discover the situation where they can't. Why? When one of John F. Kennedy's friends asked him why he would risk getting caught and compromising national security by sneaking lovers into the White House, he said, I can't help it. I can't help it is not an attractive quality to have in a president, but the general public never had to come face to face with it as we did with Clinton. Kennedy served a shorter time in office and enjoyed a less inquisitive press corps used to keeping mum about such things. Clinton's saga is pure upper limit problem. Elected president twice, he was riding a wave of high approval ratings and a booming economy with, of all things, a budget surplus in the offing. A tiny voice somewhere in him whispered, things can't possibly be this good. His upper limit switch tripped and the history had its way with him. Like most people, I think that lying is morally wrong, but for a moment, just think of Clinton's fib as a physics issue. The lie jammed a pebble in the garden hose. The flow was impeded. It took $50 million and a year of everybody's time to dislodge the pebble. As more details emerged, the war between the pebble and the flow got bigger and bigger until the inevitable happened. The DNA on Lewinsky's famous blue dress finally got him. Note to future presidents who are tempted to tell whopper lies, the flow always wins. For irrefutable evidence, have a look at the Grand Canyon. Now let's shift the focus to the practical realities of daily life. Most of us will not encounter upper limit problems that require DNA analysis, impeachment, and other Clinton-sized phenomena. So where are we likely to find our integrity breaches? The first place to look is in the subtle ways we lie to ourselves in order to conceal feelings we do not want to accept consciously. Let me give you an example. I worked with Sarah and Jonah, a married couple who shared the leadership of a family business that had grown rapidly to $40 million in annual revenue. In our first session, they traded complaints about various things. The one that had really got his goat, he said, was when she accused him of sexual flirtations with two of the employees. He had hotly denied having sexual feelings for either of the women, and the issue had quickly escalated into the same squabble that had been going on for months. One of the hazards of family businesses is that squabbles spread through the non-family employees faster than the family usually realizes. The couple had finally decided to come see me when a key employee took them aside one day and said, I don't know what's going on between you two, but can you please fix it as soon as possible? It's driving the rest of us nuts. I called a timeout and asked Sarah and Jonah when this cycle of arguing had first come up. Their answer confirmed my suspicion that it was an upper limit problem. The squabble had erupted on the heels of their best ever quarterly earnings report. They had not noticed that their squabble had broken out right after a celebration. An upper limit problem puts people into an altered state of consciousness. We go unconscious in the sense of losing touch with our rational faculties. We don't see the bigger picture. I asked Sarah and Jonah a specific question designed to wake them up from the trance of their argument. Would you be willing to consider that your conflict is not about what you think it's about? Early in my work on transcending my own upper limit, I made a key discovery. If I could consider, even for a moment, that I was not upset for the reason I thought I was, I could break out of the trance I was in. Then I could begin to see what the real issues were. When awakened from a trance, though, many of us come to with a startled, huh? That's how my clients responded, so I gave them a quick explanation of how the upper limit problem works. Sarah and Jonah got the concept quickly, but like recent occupants of a trance, they didn't see how it might apply to them. I offered them the possibility that they were having trouble accepting the higher level of success and abundance, and that their arguments were not about sexual flirtation or any of the other things they were squabbling about. Perhaps those subjects needed to be addressed, I said, but not until they got the bigger picture into focus. The bigger picture was the tendency to sabotage their good feelings because they were not accustomed to receiving the higher level of abundance and success. I suggested that through squandering their energy on criticism and the sexual flirtation issue, they were keeping themselves trapped in their zone of excellence. Sarah and Jonah greeted my interpretation skeptically, but were curious enough to stick with me a little longer. As we explored together, Sarah gave more details on how she was experiencing the situation. Right after the quarterly earnings report, she had suddenly found herself being extremely critical of herself as well as Jonah. Out of nowhere, she said, I would suddenly start making mental lists of all my shortcomings and Jonah's too. Then I couldn't keep from starting to criticize Jonah out loud. Then he would start in on me and we'd be off and running. What about those accusations of sexual flirtation, though? Where were they coming from? I knew from past experience that when you hide feelings inside yourself, you start seeing them in other people. This is especially true with sexual feelings. I wondered if Sarah had felt a sexual attraction to someone else, hidden those feelings away deep inside her, and suddenly started focusing on her husband's sexual feelings. If so, she wouldn't be the first or the 5 millionth person to do this. It's called projection, and there are dozens of chapters in the psychology textbooks on how it works. Simply put, if you have some emotion within you that you don't know how to manage, you seal that emotion away and start trying to manage other people's versions of it. I decided to play the hunch. Think back to before all this started. Did you have some sexual feelings of your own that you hid down inside you? There was an electric feeling in the room. They both seemed stunned, with a deer in the headlights look of wide eyed astonishment on their faces. Then Sarah broke the silence with an attack on the messenger. She shot me a hostile glance and sneered, so you think this is all my fault? Absolutely not, I said. This is not about fault or blame or anything like that. It's about helping you find out how things work in your relationship. Jonah suddenly chimed in with an observation. I'm remembering that party. She rolled her eyes as in, here we go again. I asked him to tell me about it, and suddenly the whole scene was illuminated. They had attended a large party at the home of some friends. It so happened that Sarah's favorite wine was being freely poured, and in the course of the evening, she'd had, in her words, more than my share. She had become engrossed in a conversation with a young man who had just finished his MBA at the local university. On the way home from the party, she and Jonah got into a huge argument. It started when she made mention of the young man's ease with communicating his feelings. Jonah's difficulty with communicating about his emotions was a frequent subject in their arguments. Let's return to that moment, see if we can figure out what was really going on, I said. I suggested that there was something completely innocent but very important about her interaction with the young man. I asked Sarah to tune in to her deepest feelings and look for anything she might be hiding from herself. It took only a few seconds for it to emerge. Tears came, and she said that her conversation with the young man had triggered a deep sadness in her. She despaired that she would never have the kind of easy flow of communication with Jonah that she felt with the young man. It also triggered gloomy midlife thoughts that she was 45 and over the hill and might never experience the kind of deep emotional intimacy she yearned for in her marriage. When people communicate at the deepest level, as Sarah was doing, it inspires others to drop into that level themselves. Jonah listened with rapt attention, and when he spoke, it was to say, in a hushed tone, I never realized how much that meant to you. Whenever that subject came up, I just heard it as criticism. I summarized, you felt attracted to the young man because you were connecting with him on the emotional level. You really want that kind of connection with Jonah, but you despair of ever getting it. If you don't get that, you're going to fail to accomplish one of your biggest life's goals. That's big stuff. No wonder you started accusing Jonah of being attracted to a couple of the young women on your staff. She nodded in agreement. Jonah leaned forward and said, to be fair, I'd have to say I am attracted to them, although I would never act on it. They both have a kind of easygoing quality to them. Sarah and I used to have that when we were younger. I miss that. Everything is always such a big deal now because we always have to be thinking about money and the business and the consequences of every little thing. When he said this, I noticed a new quality of attention on Sarah's face. This was exactly the kind of communication she was looking for from him. When he spoke to her from that deeper place in himself, he became the man she wanted to be married to, inviting her into the place where her dreams could be fulfilled. Here's something I've learned from many experiences of helping people resolve conflicts. Under the surface of most conflicts, you'll find that the warring parties are actually feeling the same deeper emotions. Two people may be locked in an angry conflict for weeks. When they get beneath the roiled surface of the issue, however, they discover that the real issue is that they're both sad about something they've both kept hidden. They've been so locked into proving each other wrong that they haven't taken a moment to contact the true heart of the issue. Sarah and Jonah were a living example of this problem. Once I see people communicating about the deeper feelings, I know that it's possible for the miracle of rebirth to occur in the relationship. Now they're communicating as allies, not as enemies. And when people do that, real life miracles are possible. Over the next couple of sessions, we worked on getting all those deeper feelings up into the light. There was sadness, and there were a number of fears they shared. They were afraid their lives were slipping away from them, swallowed up by all the long hours spent on the business, on entertaining clients, on designing and building their dream house, and on the other time demands of their big lives. Let's see. Do you want me to continue or stop there? I'm almost to the end of the chapter.
Yeah, I'm thinking we may as well just get through it because it's all on the same
Okay.
topic. So may as
All right.
well. And then we'll have the action steps at the end that we can put
Yeah,
into
we can talk
practice
about.
this week.
All right. The first step to wholeness, discovering your story. Earlier in this chapter, I mentioned that integrity is really about wholeness and completeness. An integrity breach occurs when we do something that separates us from the wholeness of ourselves or other people. To find these breaches and restore wholeness, we need to get good at asking questions like these. Where do I feel out of integrity with myself? What is keeping me from feeling complete and whole? What important feelings am I not letting into my awareness? Where in my life am I not telling the full truth? Where in my life have I not kept my promises? In my relationship with fill in the blank, what do I need to say or do to feel complete and whole? Questions such as these will lift you out of the limiting story that you've been living in. Almost all of us have a story about why we don't access our genius. When we are within the story, it is very difficult to know that it's just a story. What makes those stories seem so real, hard to recognize as just stories, is that they were being told before we were born. We're born into stories that keep us from accessing our genius. We grow up among those stories and become like fish that aren't aware of the water they're swimming in. For example, in one family, the story might be that genius leads to irresponsibility. There was old Uncle George who left his wife and 7 kids behind to go off seeking his genius in the wilds of Fiji. He was never heard from again except in one tantalizing photo he sent of himself grinning like a loon in the company of a native dance troupe. In another family, the story might be that genius leads to madness. There's old Aunt Cecily, who retreated to her room in 1927 to write poetry, and for the next 40 years could always be heard cackling and howling up there. In another family, the story might be that genius leads to poverty and decrepitude. Cousin Freddie spent his life trying to perfect an engine that ran on club soda and was forced to support himself in his old age by becoming a paperboy. Those stories are passed down from one generation to the next to protect members of the clan from straying too far outside the confines of their zones of incompetence, competence, and excellence. Whatever your story is, the first task is to find it. Identify your family story of why you shouldn't access your genius. Once you've identified it, the next task is to lose your fascination with it. Don't give yourself a hard time for being fascinated with it. You were born into it just like the rest of us. Just become more fascinated with the story of your big leap into the zone of genius. Gradually, this new fascination with genius will replace the unconscious fascination with the old program story. The attitude. I hope you're not feeling overwhelmed by the complexity of the task. If so, remember that it comes down to specific things you do, none of which takes long in clock time. For example, it takes only 10 seconds to locate and acknowledge a feeling in your body, such as sadness or fear. It takes only a few seconds to communicate a specific truth to another person, a truth that can restore wholeness to a relationship that's felt incomplete for years. As you go about your discoveries, you'll benefit from adopting an attitude of wonder instead of blame. In other words, being lighthearted about noticing your upper limit behaviors will help you make your progress faster than if you criticize yourself for every little thing. When I maintain an attitude of cheerful wonder and keen interest towards my faults and flaws, I see them dissolve and transform much more rapidly than when I give myself a hard time about them. If you're willing to adopt a playful attitude towards yourself and your shortcomings, you can make extraordinarily rapid progress. It's easier to chuckle over things than to fret over them, and chuckling is much more fun for the people around you. Here's an example of lighthearted wonder. In one of my advanced groups for executives, some of the participants began referring to the upper limit problem by its acronym ULP, ULP. They pronounced it as in gulp. One of the group's members said he remembered comic book characters saying "Ulp" when they encountered something unexpected. It didn't take long for "Ulp" to catch on. Soon people were saying things like, "I had an Ulp today," and "I caught myself in the midst of an Ulp this afternoon." I encourage you to adopt this kind of playfulness toward all your Ulps. An attitude of playful wonder is characteristic of people when they're operating in the zone of genius. For inspiration, I keep an autographed picture of Albert Einstein on the wall of my office. My wife gave it to me for my birthday some years ago. It's one of my most treasured possessions. The look of wonder in his eyes reminds me to keep seeking the deepest truths about life and to do my seeking in the spirit of play, not work. Action steps. Here's what I recommend for daily action steps. These specific actions will keep you on track and on the fast track to living in your zone of genius. Make a commitment to keeping an attitude of wonder and play while learning about your upper limit behaviors. Say this sentence in your mind as often as you like. It expresses the attitude I'd like you to embody. I commit to discovering my upper limit behaviors and to having a good time while I'm learning about them. You can learn a lot more with a spirit of wonder and enjoyment than you can with an attitude of criticism. Make a list of your upper limit behaviors. Here are some of the most common ones: worrying, blame and criticism, getting sick or hurt, squabbling, hiding significant feelings, not keeping agreements, not speaking significant truths to the relevant people. If you're mad at John, he's the relevant person to talk to. It doesn't help to tell Fred that you're mad at John. And deflecting. Brushing off compliments is a good example of deflecting. When you notice yourself doing one of the things on your upper limit list, such as worrying or failing to communicate some truth, shift your attention to the real issue, expanding your capacity for abundance, love, and success. Consciously let yourself make more room in your awareness for abundance, love, and success. Use the resources of your whole being, not just your mind. For example, feel more love in your chest and heart area. Savor the body feeling, as well as the mental satisfaction of success and abundance. Embrace a new story that tells about your adventures in your zone of genius. Find a new mythology or make up one of your own that shows you enjoying your life in the full radiance of your expressed potential. In the next chapter, we'll explore how to live your new story. You'll see how to get beyond all the fears and spells that cause us to limit our potential. You'll learn how to build a new foundation for yourself, a strong base from which you can thrive in your zone of genius.
Oh, that's a lot to unpack. I can think of a lot of different examples in my life that come to mind on these different things that we're talking about. I saw you want to jump out though, Jason. Go ahead and share your thought. I'm sure I can come back around to these.
Oh, thanks. I was just agreeing with you in my mind. That's all. I think my list probably contains everything Catherine mentioned there at the end in some way, shape, or form. And wow, what uh, a great time to be hearing this message. Beginning of the year, and just thinking, kind of off to a slow start with a new beginning, and maybe it's some of these upper limit issues. So thanks, just really glad to be here. Looking forward to hearing what you have to say, Samantha.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Catherine. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, we're only 6 days into the new year. You're not that late, honey.
Yeah, just a little slow start, feeling a lot of the slog or overwhelm from the last season. And gosh, thank you so much, great reading. I really appreciate it.
Oh,
All right. Yeah, that'll be the new thing. Oh. Oh, man, I can tell you a lot of this resonated with me, and they're talking about this couple and the growth of their business and upper limit issues and all of that. I mean, with us and our trucking company, I mean, it doesn't have anywhere near the success that they're talking about in here as far as the amount of growth, but uh, we have seen some growth in the past couple of years, and that has been it, it's been great, but yet I can see how I have had fears, so many fears around, what ifs, what ifs. I have these worries that, it's going so good, okay, something's going to happen, right? And but I can see how that when they're talking about these random squabbles that will come up when you're having more success, and this concept of not sure what to do with the good feelings, and so, or not being used to the good feelings, and so then you create all of these bad feelings, and worry for me is probably the one of the top ones that comes into play when I'm feeling good about what's going on. I immediately switch into this mode of worrying, what if one of our employees quits, or what if the truck, well, I don't know, the truck's breaking down, I guess doesn't bother me as much because I know we can resolve that. But if if something happens, like an accident out there on the road, or I mean, things like that get me all worried, and or what if something happens to my husband, or what if something happens to my son, all these different things come into mind. And and so worry is a huge one. And then my other one, where it's talking about this concept of projecting uh, something that's going on within yourself onto other people in your life. And with me and my husband, I feel like a lot of times when I don't feel like I'm doing everything I need to be doing, then I immediately go into this like critical criticism towards him, like he's not doing what he needs to be doing. And that's totally a surface story. Like what it's talking about is that it's just this whole idea that, I don't want to face the fact that I'm not doing the things that I think I need to be doing. And instead, I'm going to be upset with him for not doing what I think he needs to be doing. So there's been these we'll get into these silly squabbles over silly stuff, like he is a night person and I'm a morning person. And so when he sleeps until 11 or noon on the weekend, it aggravates me because I'm like, you need to be doing this and that and the other, and you're not even up yet. Versus recognizing he does his best work in the afternoon and in the evening. He'll stay out there in the shop until 10 o'clock at night. And I'm like, I'm overworking by 5 p.m. I'm like, oh, I got to get done with this. And I mean, I will work into the evening sometimes, but I don't do my best work at that time. So it's interesting how we can turn these worries and or we can take the success that we're having and we can sabotage ourselves with these silly things that just don't make any sense at all. I mean, and then the fact that we can have feelings that we don't even necessarily realize that we're having feelings about, like when they're talking about the couple, um and she was criticizing him, or they're getting in an argument because she thought he was flirting with someone else. And it all boiled down to her worry within herself that she would never have this deeper connection with her husband. And I can recognize some of the things in my life with my husband and arguments that we've gotten into that have absolutely nothing to do with what we're arguing about, and really it has something to do with what's going on inside of me, and my worries about some aspect of our relationship. And it's so fascinating how we do that to ourselves. And if we can ask ourselves these questions that it was talking about to get to the deeper thing that we're really concerned about, that we can open up a deeper level of communication between ourselves and not have these silly squabbles. It's like I can see watching my son and his wife and some of the conversations and little squabbles that they get into, and I can clearly see that it has nothing to do with what they're actually arguing about. But as individuals, when we're in the midst of it, we have a hard time really seeing what it is we're really feeling and what we need to communicate, because I feel like we've just never been taught those skills of straightforward communication of what we really feel. And instead we go into these modes of projection and criticism, and we come up with reasons to get in arguments, when in reality we really just need to talk about these deeper level things. So I it's fascinating. I'm glad that we have some questions that we can help ask ourselves when we are in the midst of, because when we're in the midst of it, it's hard to recognize what's really going on. And if we can, at least ask ourselves the questions afterward, and figure out, okay, what is the deeper thing that I'm trying to work through? And then why am I starting this silly argument that makes no sense? So.
Yeah, and I think those questions are really good, not just as far as communication goes, but even like within myself, I ask myself questions similar like that in regards to pain, or different health issues and things I'm experiencing, because I recognize that I do stuff my emotions. I mean, I had like acid eat a hole in my face, my chest. I never made a sound. Gave birth to a 9-pound, 2-ounce kid, never made a sound. Like, I am so stoic. It is just wrong. And I recognize that those emotions get trapped in my body and come out of, surface as different things trying to get my attention. So I think questions are really good. And especially, when you're locked into when you've put yourself into a corner, kind of, like you're locked into a fixed position, a thought about a certain thing, and you're just there and you're just going to fight to the death over it, like there's no way you're budging on that. It is, I mean, if you can be open-minded at all, like it is so helpful to ask questions to yourself about that and to try to look at that situation from a completely different point of view, like just somebody on the other world or from the other side of the world, looking at that situation. And because you can always see, Samantha, like you said, when you look at other people's things, you can always see that it's not about what they think it is, or you can see how to get them out of it or whatever. You might not always tell them because it's not always welcome, but you can always see it. So when we're in those fixed positions, if we can just pretend that we're, somebody from Germany looking at, I don't know, just somebody else, somebody different that's not associated, maybe we can pick up on some of those things and come out of that corner. Because there's always 2 or 10 sides to every situation.
Yeah, that's such a good point because we can have such deeper connections if we can communicate our our deeper feelings. And I think we have a lot of fear around that though, And just like when that couple and that she was worried she was never going to have this deeper level of communication about feelings with her husband, and then she felt guilty about having an easy conversation with another person, and of course then that makes her feel even worse about the situation. And then when she sees him possibly flirting with someone else, and she feels like, oh, now it's more separation. He's able to flirt with someone else, and I'm feeling like I'm never going to have this deeper level connection with him. And then what was it that he was saying that he was feeling, uh, that he felt, that was his deeper level thing? Do you remember catching that one? Anybody? I can't remember what it was. He also was struggling with a deeper.
Oh, the husband.
Yeah.
Yeah, he said he had felt attraction for them. I can't remember what his was. I'll have to look back.
Or maybe it was just that. Yeah, because it seemed like he also, when she said her deeper feeling, then he also kind of came back with his deeper feeling, and that was when it opened up the kind of the floodgates of their emotional. And then they were more connected then afterwards once they both were able to, because she was like, oh, okay. Well,
Something
he had
about
said,
business.
well, I think that he had said that he says, I never realized how much that meant to you. Whenever that subject came up, I just heard it as criticism. So that was what he was feeling. And she was feeling like she would never have that deep emotional intimacy with him as what she wanted. And but he always felt like she was criticizing him. And but then they were able to have a closer connection just from having that feeling explained, because I think that it's hard to express our feelings without uh, sounding critical or accusatory towards another person when it's something that we want from that other person, and explaining it in such a way that they don't feel uh, you know what's the word accused or whatever, and we just weren't taught those skills. We weren't taught those skills to say to a person, I don't know. It's saying it in the right words so that we don't sound accusatory, or that we aren't sounding critical. Uh, it's like I struggle a little bit with my husband on communicating some of my deeper feelings with him that have to do with our health. And of course, he's got a lot of extra weight, and I worry about him because I'm worried he's not going to be around as long as what he could be if he would take more, if he would do more to for his health. And so I know that I am critical on him in a lot of ways, and it comes out as being critical on him, how he eats and how he smokes and does all these things. And but really, and I know that I have said to him before that I worry about him not being here in 10 years and or less. I just don't know. And it's because I want him around. It's not because I want him to be, I mean, I want him to be healthier, but the real thing is that I want him to be around, and I worry about his health, and I know I'm critical on him about that. And then at the same time, I'm sure he's feeling that I'm being critical and accusatory and whatever along that lines. And I'm sure that he also probably has feelings of not doing as much as he could be doing, or how, because we all know what we're supposed to do, and yet we don't do it. And we don't need somebody to tell us that we're not doing it right, because we're already telling ourselves that. Right? So there's that whole
Yeah, and the communication part of it
yeah.
is such a two-way street. Like, was being mentioned that we can come across critical. It's we, um, and it's not necessarily our fault that we're coming across critical, because a lot of times people are trying to read between the lines and figure out why you are even um, saying something to them about something, like looking for some other agenda, or like, what are you trying to get at? And it's like, I'm just, asking, just inquiring about whatever it might be, because you want to learn more about the person, or you want to spur on a conversation or whatever. Um, and the person, on the other side of the communication is looking at it either from a point of projection, or has their own, I don't know if those were the upper limit, the issues, but those things in their mind that are keeping them from being able to communicate. um, and it can just sort of congest the whole thing. It may, they start off talking about in this in this in this chapter about a simple pebble being caught in a hose that causes a problem of integrity in the line that creates the pressure. And then they go into this whole communication discussion about communication, and how these these problems with our own integrity can create a pressure within ourselves, which then cause that communication problem. So it's so interesting to me that um, that that something as as slight as an issue of um, with our own integrity at some level, or maybe even the integrity of someone else's story that we've heard of or heard about, like those stories that were told about, problems with being a genius and what have you. How those, even if it's even if it's not a problem with our own integrity, it's a problem with someone else's, a story about someone else's problem with their integrity that we have grown to um, uh, grown to believe in, that it can have an issue with our own communication that then causes other other issues with our own, with our own questioning of what it is we're doing, wrong, that's causing these issues and gumming up the works, or causing that integrity problem in our own lives. So um, it seems a little bit of a circular problem, but it's certainly like what Catherine was mentioning, looking at things from a different perspective, from someone else's perspective, or at least seeing how all this stuff can be involved, and a cascading or a domino effect sort of in our lives is eye-opening. And I think what's helping me right now is the idea that they mentioned of having a playful attitude towards it all. I think that is helping me keep from being, completely anxious about this whole discussion, because it's just really eye-opening, and I do see a lot of this. I see a lot of this in my own life, and especially this past year, with so much so many awful things happening in my life, and with people I love, and having passed away. It's so many questions have popped up, and so many realizations have popped up. They're life-changing events, and I think a lot of people these past few years have had some life-changing events that we don't want. Don't want these things to pile on top of everything else. Kind of really, at the point where I just want to delve in, figure it out, and make sense of it, so we can kind of learn how to move on and be, live better and be better. And so I guess having a playful attitude about it, and understanding that so many other people are feeling, like they're in the same boat or had similar circumstances, helps a lot. So glad to have heard this reading. Thank you so much for that great reading, Catherine. I appreciate you, and thank you for your input, Samantha, and all you do. I feel like I really needed this discussion this morning. So thank you so much, everybody. Appreciate you.
You're so welcome. Samantha, I can so relate to this situation about people's health, because pretty much, well, not so much my kids, but pretty much everybody else in my family and some close friends too, have health issues, and it is completely diet related. It completely, like, their health issues are diet related, and diet is not a hard one to fix. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's the simplest thing to fix, but to have the willpower to do it is another issue. But it's so hard for me, and also because I come from the alternative health standpoint, and it seems like just almost everybody that I'm surrounded with comes from like the traditional medicinal standpoint, and it is so frustrating to see people who are killing themselves with food, going on medications, to fix, and I say that very sarcastically, themselves. And I know, being a nurse, I know the damage that those medications are doing to them. And I just that's an area I can get so frustrated that I could just do more than scream. I mean, there's just, especially the people that are the closest to me, like my parents and stuff. And I just, but it's a free will planet. I try to keep reminding people that, because I don't know, I think most people, they may not like have really thought it out all the way through what their beliefs are, but most people kind of believe in an afterlife, and most people believe in a good afterlife, like most people do believe that this isn't the only go around, that we're not just here for this 60 years or 80 years or 2 minutes, whatever you get, and then that's the end. So if you believe that your spirit, that your eternal spirit, then you have to be so freaking fascinated and grateful for this vessel that you're in, because without this vessel, without this body, we would not be able to experience any of this. I would not be talking to you. You would not be hearing my voice. You would not have had that delicious coffee this morning. You would not be able to stand under a hot shower and just taking in the energy of that, and just the deliciousness of chocolate or whatever you like. Think about all of the things that you get to experience, even in just an hour of one day here on this planet. And you wouldn't be able to do any of that without your vessel, guys. So take care of your body. Take care of your body. You can't experience any of this without your body. And it does so much on its own. I mean, my God, it does, it runs itself. We don't have to think about breathing or our heart beating. And just, oh my gosh, it's just such an amazing, it heals itself. It's self-healing. And if you will just eat food, if you will just eat to live instead of living to eat, if you will just eat food that has just the basic nutrition that your body needs to keep going, and not keep putting all this other stuff in it. It's really about gratitude, I guess. I know that sounds so cliche, but I just have so much gratitude for my body. Even though, my body gives me a hell of a lot of pain. You guys know, like I could hate my body really easy, but I don't. I'm just so grateful for it. I really am, because I just experience an eternity of happiness in sometimes 3 seconds of time. Sometimes I find things that are just so perfect that you have to know that you exist beyond these few years, these few simple years that we're here. And so take care of your vessel, take care of your body, make friends with it. It's the best friend you got, guys. It really is. I mean, otherwise we we'd be off in our ethereal, space, which is, of course, we're pure love and we're happy and satisfied and everything, but we come here for a reason. We want to experience all this stuff. This is like the greatest amusement park ever invented, and we come down here, and then a lot of us, unfortunately, and myself included, for many years, we abuse the hell out of our bodies, you know, and we got to be friends with ourselves first. It's true. We have to love ourselves first. And part of loving yourself is taking care of yourself. So I hope you all take good care of yourself this week and just be really grateful for every moment, because the earth has lost a lot of beings in the past few years. And, I think that they've gone up and they'll come back, and, we're trying to straighten things out down here. Whether we ever will or not, I don't know. But when we're here, we have to do the best job that we can, I think. And part of that is taking care of your body. So I love you guys. I hope you have an awesome week. See you next time.
Thank you. Great message. Glad to be here. Thank you. Have a great week, everyone.
I second that. So grateful for this hour I get to spend here with you all.
Yeah.
We always have such great insights when we're talking, and we learn so much from each other. I just appreciate all of you so very much. Is that there? See if I can get my voice to work here. Is that all that everybody has for today? Shall we wrap it up? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, great. Well,
Lot
for
to
those
think
of you
about.
who, oh, go ahead, Jason. What'd you say?
A lot to think about, and some action steps.
Uh-huh.
Thank you so much.
Right. Well, for those of you who have watched this far along into our discussion, I'm thinking that you've probably gotten some value. And if you have, click like on this video and share it with anybody who you think might find value in it. So, and if you'd like to join our discussion to add your insights, we'd love to have you. You can go to search for Mindset Mastery Collective on Facebook. That's our Facebook group where there's links in there where you can find our link to get into our Zoom meeting, and or just go to Mindset Mastery Collective and there'll be a little link at the top, a menu item that says start here, and it'll tell you all the different places that you can find us. And we'd love to have you and love to have you add your thoughts to our discussion. So with that, guys, have a great, awesome, amazing week. We'll see you next time on the Saturday Morning Mastermind. Bye for now.